And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
Spain's unemployment rate has reached a record new high. The number of people out of work is now just over 6 million, raising the jobless rate in the Eurozone's fourth biggest economy to 27.2%. The new figures also reveal that there are close to 2 million households where no one is working. We're 4 people at home, 4 of us of legal age, and none of us has a job, this man says. My wife and I get a government subsidy and we have to pay a mortgage, and that's what overwhelms us. Every day there are more of us in this queue. If they make more cuts, I don't know where we're going to end up, this woman says. The worse-than-expected figures will heap further pressure onto Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, who's due to announce further spending cuts on Friday.
All right. Okay, I am on the phone. I don't know if you guys can hear me now. Now we can hear you.
All right.
Okay.
So therefore,
I'm going to mute the Skype host call.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for this issue. Whatever this issue might be, we want to welcome you to a Thursday edition of the Hagmann. The Hagmann Report today is Thursday.
Let me take care of the big words. And my father had, as we told you, some
a little surgery today on my mouth, so don't worry about it.
And when I got here a couple hours ago, he was having a hard time speaking. He seems to be doing much better now. He's still very swollen. Thursday came out a little funny there, but that's okay.
All right. Well, at any rate.
Yeah, sorry about the problems with the sound. I don't understand what's going on. We are connected live through Skype.
That's all right. Well, let's get right into the program tonight, folks. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com. For those new listeners, I want to say hello to Jan in Williamsburg, or Jim in Williamsburg, Virginia, who together there with members with his crew in the diner are listening to this program. Jan in Mason City, Iowa, they have a group that they're listening to this program with. Great start, Jan, right? And, of course, the folks in Grand Junction, Colorado, tuning in new to this program, welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com, and we are here to provide you with the news in 3 dimensions. This is the only show where the news is presented to you in multi-dimensions. We look beyond the headlines and bylines and bring you the news beyond the news. And, Joe, I want to let you take it from here. We have a lot of things to get into. But let me reiterate, our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com. From there, go ahead, my friend.
Well, right now I'm going to start a live chat with the Blog Talk representatives, as obviously there is some sort of issue. But if you guys can hear us through the phone systems, we'll keep this running and just use this. I could not hear the audio clips when they played. We did not hear an intro, but
we heard nothing actually. We thought we were cut off from everything, and we still might be.
Yeah. It's just very odd, but we're going to hit some news. What you heard in the audio, I'll play again in a few minutes here, but Spain has their unemployment numbers for the month of March, I think. Here, Spain unemployment rate at a record 27.16%. Spain's unemployment rate soared to a new record, 27.16% of the workforce in the first quarter of 2013, as the number of those without jobs surpassed 6 million. The unemployment rate jumped from 26.202% in the previous quarter. The number climbed by 237,400 people to 6.2 million people unemployed. That's just amazing. Spain, once the motor of job creation in the 17-nation Eurozone, is in a double-dip recession, yet having to recover from the collapse in 2008 of labor-intensive property boom. Sounds like what we had here with the mortgage bubble. Anyway, Spain is going through protests, and they are getting rowdy, from what I understand, over there. And I think Portugal too. They had some staged demonstrations ready to go, and that's something we're going to want to keep our eye on.
I just want to chime in here and just say that this is an orchestrated economic collapse. It's global. You're not going to be able to run from it. And that's just what I wanted to say about that.
Yeah. What my dad was saying, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. I'll post a link in the chat room here. Benghazi report, trinkets of treason. This is a very interesting story.
It has a few nuggets in there that other articles about the same. I was talking, or actually listening, not talking. I was listening to someone today who contacted me, a very close friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, and the intelligence venue, who said, the article is like a pink elephant. I'm in a room of pink elephants. It's being hidden. The trinkets inside the article are not being picked up. Folks, if you read what the trinkets are, of course we went over this last night about the different warehouses in northern Libya. So that said, definitely HomelandSecurityUS.com. If you read the article, Trinkets of Treason, and of course spread it around on social networking sites. We need to get a church commission, another church commission or church committee going. We need to hold these people accountable. We need to have trials for treason. We need to, and if these words sound a little bit rough, they are. Joe, again, I apologize if we're a little disjointed this evening because I was not going to come on the air, but go ahead and continue. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there on that. There's a lot more coming, folks. I've got a lot more information to get out there. It's just a matter of putting it together. And Joe's done so much research on this, on Benghazi, on other areas.
I've been focusing on the domestic area specifically, and some of the things that are being put out there by the Department of Defense lately. We've seen a number of PDFs put out by the Department of Defense outlining what they were going to do with civil operations involving U.S., Canada. There's one PDF in particular that talked about joint drills or joint assistance. And we are seeing a massive amount, as you wrote in your article here. The security issue is a diversion, this section. When you get into how the investigative reports started out as and this is something we talked about constantly, is the protests, what was it? Innocence of Muslims movie, protests, but it wasn't even a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had Steve Klein. We interviewed him on air, and essentially I feel like Steve Klein lied to us, and I don't like talking about guests when they're not available to defend themselves, but
either way,
I just have we were not told the entire truth when Steve Klein, the self-appointed spokesman for the film Innocence of Muslims, came on the air. It was a Sunday night. I think we had him on for 90 minutes, and basically we got nothing out of him. But the fact of the matter is, this film had nothing to do with Benghazi, and in fact, even more so, the talking points about this film, about the cause of the attacks in Benghazi. The interim report basically has called the White House and Hillary Clinton liars. I mean, I cannot There's no other way to put it. They lied to the American people, to the taxpayer, about the reasons for Benghazi, but they can't tell the truth, Joe.
No, but I want to play this audio here. This is a 5-minute clip that needs to be played, and then I'm going to be in contact with. This is Defense Secretary Hagel talking about the chemical weapons that were used in Syria today.
Okay, and think
allegedly.
now, and when you listen to this clip, you think about why we overtook Libya, and of course what we did in Egypt, and where these North Africa,
Jordan,
right?
The troops to Jordan.
This
to Turkey.
is all connected.
Yeah, we saw the green light given to Iran or Israel to strike Iran. Hagel said that.
The fuse for World War III, folks, has been lit.
And we have, it has. And we have John McCain and Lindsey Graham taking the opportunity as soon as they hear the word chemical, possibility of a chemical attack, already pushing for troops to be sent in to Syria, U.S. forces to invade Syria
and folks,
to support the rebel Al-Qaeda fighters.
Right.
And they say this out loud, minus Al-Qaeda.
But think about this. When our men and women are on the ground in Syria, they're not just going to be fighting Syrian troops. They're going to be fighting Russian troops as well. Listen to this article, or listen to the sound clip, and with that in mind, take a listen to this very important sound clip by Chuck Hagel.
The U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel has said his intelligence services have, quote, some confidence the Syrian government has used chemical weapons on a small scale, and said it's believed that the nerve agent sarin was used against civilians and rebel fighters. Let's get more details from RT's Marina Portnaya live for us in New York. So Hagel's comments are the first confirmation of any kind of chemical weapons being used in this conflict. Tell us more about that and what effects it could have.
Well, while addressing reporters in Abu Dhabi, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said that the White House has informed members of Congress that intelligence officials believe with some degree of varying confidence that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government has used chemical weapons against members of the opposition, specifically sarin gas. Hagel didn't provide any specific facts on when or where the alleged weapons were used, and it is not even clear what the phrase "with some degree of varying confidence" even means. Does that mean that one intelligence official is confident that this has taken place and one is not confident? Clearly that language is either convoluted or a bit confusing. Now, Secretary Hagel said that Assad's use of chemical weapons violates every convention of warfare. But what's interesting is that on Tuesday, Israel's intelligence officials claimed that the Syrian government had used lethal chemical weapons against rebels, and at that time, Secretary Hagel expressed his doubts about those findings. Now, the U.S. is currently pressing for the United Nations to conduct a comprehensive investigation into allegations of Damascus's use of chemical weapons. But the United Nations Secretary General has previously appointed a team of experts, but the Syrian government has been accused of blocking the team from doing its work. Meanwhile, Syrian officials have accused rebels in the country of using chemical weapons. Now, according to the Associated Press, Secretary of State John Kerry has recently come out and also said that the Syrian government has launched 2 chemical attacks against members of the opposition. Those accusations have already been made by Britain and France back in March. Now, U.S. President Barack Obama has previously said that the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government would be a game changer in the U.S. position on intervening in the 2-year-old civil war. In a letter sent to 2 U.S. senators, a White House legal official did write that the assessment of likely chemical weapons use in Syria will not automatically trigger action, including military intervention. But the official also referred to bad intelligence about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that led to the U.S. invasion of that country. In that case, the intelligence was proved wrong. Everybody can remember just a decade ago when Colin Powell sat in the chambers of the United Nations Security Council shaking a vial to try to convince the international community to go along with America's invasion into Iraq. And clearly his claims of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction were proven wrong. But nonetheless,
welcome to Blog Talk Radio. If you desire to speak to the host, please press 1 at any time, and the host will be notified that there is a caller in queue. Otherwise, please hold and you'll be able to listen to the show.
Other Republicans in the U.S. are calling for the establishment of a, quote, safe zone in Syria and also urging for the provisionment of weapons where necessary to be provided to rebel fighters in Syria.
Now, at this point, have any of Washington's other allies in the West or in the region spoken out about this?
Absolutely. Britain's Foreign Office says it has limited but persuasive information from various sources showing chemical weapons used in Syria, including, of those chemical weapons, including sarin gas. Now, again, persuasive evidence, again, with this jargon, these words, that is not quite clear and not 100% factual. Now, UK officials are calling on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to cooperate with international bodies to prove he had not sanctioned their use. In a statement, a spokesperson for Britain's Foreign Office called the situation in Syria extremely concerning and said the use of chemical weapons is a war crime. Back in March, but here's what's most important, I think, to point out in this developing story. In March, when the U.S. intelligence community was previously investigating reports of chemical weapons used in Syria, blood samples the opposition groups in Syria from alleged victims. But here's the problem. According to reports, American analysts couldn't be entirely sure where exactly those blood samples came from or when precisely the alleged exposure took place. So even any investigations that the American intelligence community has made hasn't been 100% conclusive. But according to what some experts, what is conclusive here is that the current accusations against the Syrian government that are taking place now is eerily similar to the accusations that were made against the Iraq government preceding America's invasion in 2003. And that is the concern right now that many experts are voicing, is that all these statements being made by Washington and its Western counterparts can lead to military invasion when there are not enough facts yet in place. So this is the recent development taking place, of course, coming from statements made by Chuck Hagel.
All right, Ortiz Marina Portnoy live for us in New York. Thanks for that update.
All right. There was Chuck Hagel reporting that he was confident that chemical weapons were used in Syria. And this has been called, as Obama stated, crossing the red line. But was there chemical weapons used? If there was, who used them? And what about the other day when there were also reports of chemical weapons used? Why are we not getting the full story? And it's not just with this. It's with basically everything we see. Now, what we're trying to do, and we are going to do this, is we're going to reconfigure our sound in a way that
well, I'm not exactly sure.
Skype to call in.
I'm not exactly sure of our sound issues. Folks in the chat, at this point here, what I want to know is from folks in the chat if they can hear us clear, and if so, just give us a thumbs up, because we are definitely having some additional issues with the audio, but
yeah, we're going to get this resolved.
But in the meantime, folks, did you hear when you heard that audio playing? Understand what it really represents. Understand understand what is really going on here. Let me just reconnect here.
Yeah, and he's jumping over to a different connection, and I'm going to unmute you and bring you on there.
All right. I don't know if you can hear me or not, if this is muffled. Is this worse or better?
Okay, I hear you. You come across much better. They're saying much better in the chat. Okay.
All right.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect as host with Skype and call in with as host.
That won't drop me?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
We've been knocked off before, and Steve was talking, and Pastor Langford were talking.
All right, we'll give it a try. It's the issue of live radio, you know.
Okay, so you want me to play a clip while we do
Let's do that. Let's go to
Nigel Farage talking about Cyprus cash grab, template for future stealing. Also, Harry Reid, Tea Partiers are nonviolent anarchists who don't believe in government. We have Boston's bombing facts and fantasy.
Harry Reid first, and then because we have a whole lot of information on the Boston bombing as well, but let's go to Harry Reid.
All right, this is short. It's only a minute and 38 seconds. This is Harry Reid on the House floor, Senate floor today, talking about the Tea Party.
And I would also talk about my friend from Oklahoma. I know that he's smart, and I understand that. But, Madam President, just because you're smart doesn't mean you're always right. Madam President, we have a situation where this country has been driven by the Tea Party for the last number of years. When I was in school, I studied government, and I learned about the anarchists. Now, they were different than the Tea Party because they were violent, but they were anarchists because they did not believe in government at any level, and they acknowledged it. The Tea Party kind of hides that. They don't say we're against government, but that's what it all amounts to. They're not doing physically destructive things to buildings and people, but they are doing everything they can to throw a monkey wrench into any form of government, whether it's local, whether it's state or federal government. That's what it's all about. And so anything they can do to throw a monkey wrench in the wheels of government, they're happy doing that. And I'm sorry to say my friend from Oklahoma is helping them. Maybe not directly, but indirectly, and that's wrong. Government is not inherently bad. Government is inherently good. That's why we have a constitution, and that's what we direct the activities of this government based upon. So, Madam President, we have a situation here that is really not good.
And there you have it. There you've got Harry Reid attempting to demonize, not attempting, but outright talking against the Tea Party members, against the conservatives, and of course, you see where this is going. This is going toward the demonization of conservative Christians, and it's clear. And we're seeing a lot, by the way, and we are amassing a lot of information about what happened in Boston. Of course, what we need to do is we need to have another church committee. We need to hold accountable the CIA and, of course, the State Department for their actions from Benghazi to even the CIA's potential involvement with what happened in Boston. Now, people might think, well, wait a minute, this is crazy talk because Boston is pretty much what it is. Folks, you realize that we've been spending $100 million per year to send to Chechnya. That's like kicking sand in the face of Russia, and yet this is just what we know about. What Black Ops and Black Ops money don't we know about? We need a full investigative inquiry, a la the Church Committee back in the 70s, mid-70s, to uncover the fraud or uncover the actions of the CIA and the State Department, because we're not being told the truth. We're not being told the truth about Benghazi. We're not being told the truth about Boston. We have not been told the truth about anything over the last multiple decades. And it's about time. And by the way, no one is being held accountable. No one's being held accountable for what is taking place. You saw, if you read my investigative report on the interim report on Benghazi, you can see that there's not one darn congressman, not one person that you and I employ as Americans, or that if you're listening to this outside the country, and we want to say hello to a certain camp in Afghanistan who listens every night. I want to thank you for listening, but and especially if you're serving our country, you want the truth. But there is not one congressman or senator that appears to be willing to stand up and to hold Napolitano, Clinton, Kerry, now Obama accountable for what's taking place. And we need, at the very least, we need a church committee style hearing, a formal series of hearings on the State Department and, of course, the CIA. In addition,
we need to file formal criminal complaints that would name Barack Hussein Obama as part and parcel to treason. Now, Obama himself is a clear and present danger to the United States national security, to the U.S. Constitution, our republic form of government. Look, he is a foreign-born, to the best of our knowledge, he's a foreign-born domestic enemy. He is working to destroy this country, as others past have as well. You know, we still have no series of records that exist showing Obama as being qualified as eligible for to be president. This is all part and parcel to a plan, a larger plan that we call the capture, being a captured operation. And as I was listening to my friend today, we have to describe what a captured operation is and exactly where it was captured. And the two places it was captured, of course, one is the State Department. And M. Stanton Evans wrote a tremendous book about the communist infiltration into the State Department's into the communist infiltration in the State Department. Where did all the money from Obama's 2008 campaign come from? You know, those small contributions, the $200 and $300 contributions. It more than likely came to Obama via Muslim Brotherhood, or from Muslim Brotherhood, from the Saudi interests through mosques here in America and elsewhere. We have to understand that this country has been bought and paid for by the Saudi interests. And one has to question now, are we doing the work of the Saudis? Of course we are. Who's answering to who? Is the United States answering to the Saudis? Are the Saudis answering to the United States? No, I believe, based on information, that we are answering to the Saudis. The Saudis, in this case, are the puppet masters. But who's behind the Saudis? Behind the Saudis are the globalists that want to create this new world order. You see, it's a family. These are families that run things. Whether it's the Bush family, Aramco, back in the 40s, or even earlier than that, in the 30s, to what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a situation bear out. We're seeing the fruits of decades of the labor of the Illuminati playing out right now. Right now, we are at that very point in time where, unless something drastic happens, we are gone as a nation. And folks, you know that. It's kind of like preaching to the choir in a sense. You know that. What can we do about it? Well, the things that we can do about it, we have to enforce our own level of civil disobedience. If you live in a state where they're attempting to take away your Second Amendment rights, well, you have to fight it. If you are living in a state where you still have freedoms left, you've got to prepare. And as I always ask, what have you done to prepare today for what's coming? Preparation means being self-sufficient to the best of your ability, and getting your money out of the banks, out of investments. If you've got money in the banks, and I'm talking substantial money in the banks, it would be a lot safer. Well, just let me ask you a question. Why do you have your money in the bank? Are they paying you interest? Are you earning a lot? Are you earning enough to actually? Are you earning enough money that would kind of like hedging your bets, or kind of like putting a odds bet in Las Vegas on the craps game?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Joe. Welcome back to the program.
Okay, that was fun.
Yeah. But see, here, this is where we're headed. So we need an actual commission to investigate all of the wrongs by the CIA, by the State Department, and of course by Obama and by the elected leaders. Short of that, my friends, I really fear that we are going to see bloodshed on the streets of America, and sooner rather than later. And I also believe that we opened up with earlier, Chuck Hagel talking, we're going to see something in the Middle East happen in a very short period of time. And it might be sparked by something that happens in the Korean Peninsula. It might be sparked by something that happens in North Africa. or because of actions in North Africa, but watch very carefully the Middle East, because we do expect something to happen there in the short term, especially during the month of April. The month of April has always been the Illuminati month, if you will. There are certain dates that we have to watch for in April. And, of course, we have May Day coming up. And in case you missed the announcement, which I'm not even sure we gave this announcement, Wednesday, May 1st, May Day, Nathan Leal will be with us the entire program. And, Joe, you had set up, I think, a guest slot, didn't you? Who else is? Oh, of course, Pastor Langford and Steve Quayle will be on this Sunday as well.
And Paul McGuire, I talked to him last week. He said we were going to get him on the show. What we wanted to do is give time for promoting it, because he has a lot of ways that he can promote the show. And we were talking about our listening audience, and he was very surprised at the amount of listeners we had.
Who are you referring to?
Paul McGuire.
Paul McGuire, right.
He used to go on Fox News all the time, and as a contributor, and he hosted a Christian radio show for about 10 years. But he was a guest on the show before, and for those of you who don't remember, he started at the very end of the show, started talking about a dream he had or a vision he had, and he got real emotional. And that's where we want to pick up. It was right where he stopped last time.
Well, I'm just going to finish this up real quick, ladies and gentlemen, from my end. If you read at HomelandSecurityUS.com and CanadaFreePress.com the article entitled, I don't like it when people do that. The article that was just written, Benghazi Report, Trinkets of Treason. Please read that. Please spread it around. In there, you're going to find little nuggets of information that will be surprising to some. And by the way, I did receive a comment in Canada Free Press where there was an article at Town Hall that says the plan at Benghazi was a kidnapping plan gone awry. Folks, that is, and I cannot stress this enough, that has been planted. That story has been planted by Obama's people to take people off track of the real story. That has absolutely, positively, and I can state this with authority, absolutely no truth to that matter. There's nothing about the blind sheik, some kidnapping plan gone awry. That's totally bogus. If you hear it, please dismiss it. But don't believe me necessarily. Do your own research. And ask a detective, preferably somebody from the FBI, how easy or how difficult, perhaps would be the better way to put it, when you're dealing with bad guys all over the place, do you honestly think, and even with the hubris of this administration, do you honestly think they would believe that they could pull something like that off? It makes no sense because of all of the variables in addition to other information. No, the true issue is weapons running. And see, the fuse, as tonight's program, the fuse for World War III has been lit. It has been lit for a long time. It's got a slow burn, but you are watching history being made. Boston, Benghazi, all of this, these are all related. And as one thing I'm going to ask a dear friend of mine, Marianne, who's listening to the program tonight, I'm going to ask her for some assistance in project research as well into the timelines and also some of the facts verification into what happened in Boston. We have, like we had said, we've got basically I don't know, it's now well over 2,000 pages of documents about Boston. And what we have to do is separate and verify and authenticate the facts. But you're not getting the full story in Boston. We had facial recognition software at the finish line, at that starting line, and we knew exactly, when I say we, I'm talking about the United States, knew exactly who was present and who wasn't. Who knew who was bad and who was good. We had teams represented of DHS at the finish line. But see, the lie is so big, and the overall what would I say project is so big to take down this country that we're only seeing just a minor sliver of things. So I just want to Again, I want to close by saying whether we're talking about Benghazi or Boston or whatever, everything is related. What's the end game? The global governance, and we have to keep this in mind. And we're only seeing. It's like touching an elephant. One person touches the tail, the other person touches the trunk. They feel two different things. They describe two different things. But the fact is, it's still an elephant. And again, I apologize too for my inability to articulate very well tonight after some mouth surgery this afternoon or this morning.
Looks like somebody hit him in the face with a crowbar.
Yeah, actually, I looked in the mirror and I didn't realize my eye is actually black and blue. I had a bone infection, and so anyway, it's a very painful process, a very painful thing. But with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Joe, to pick up where I left off. Look, I think it's important for people to understand. It's so important for people to understand where we are headed, and if not stopped, we are going to find ourselves broke, desperate. Well, we're going to find ourselves engaged in a global conflict. We're going to find ourselves engaged in a civil war. We're going to find ourselves without any buying power because we will not have the cash because of the orchestrated economic attack against our country. So all of these things together, Obama was selected by who in Chantilly, Virginia? Who selected Obama?
Well, I think the selection was made before there. That was just the announcing point.
Right.
But these people were the people, and other people behind the scenes. We're talking about people like Zbigniew Brzezinski, David Rockefeller, the Bush family, all the major families who are involved with the Federal Reserve banking system that secretly run the government. They're known as the shadow government. They are in and very close to fully implementing their death harvest, I'd call it. The harvest of the sheep.
I was actually listening. It's amazing because Joe did have a captive audience earlier. He probably wishes he had it back because I was stuffed with gauze, so I really couldn't talk. But he was talking about the soul harvesting, if you will, and it made sense to me as he was saying
this.
They
talk about it like it's no big deal. Something has to be done. The useless leaders are using too much resources.
One thing I want to say about the Boston thing, I got an email to Francis. Yes, I will say this. Thank you for your email, Francis. Francis from New Mexico. The question is, do you believe or do you have any information to suspect that the older of the two bombers from Boston was on the payroll for the CIA? Folks, Napolitano, and you might remember this, admitted that the older brother of the two Boston bombers traveled to Russia on a passport, but traveled back to the United States without a passport. Now, how does that happen? Without his passport, that is. He traveled on essentially a counterfeit passport. Well, the CIA had to get him out of Russia because Russia outed him. He was working for the CIA. This is something that we're going to be working on as well, just to let you know how big this story is. Everyone's grabbing a piece of the elephant and thinking it's a trunk or thinking it's one thing when it's all part of the same elephant. Joe, I'll just send it back to you.
All right. Really we are being set up for the slaughter, and few people even realize or feel, or not, maybe I shouldn't say feel, know how to or know what's going on in the spiritual world. I talked to Brother Marcus from South Dakota. Steve's mentioned him a number of times. He ministers to Native Americans out in South Dakota, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, Marcus Samuel out of South Dakota works exclusively to spread the Word of God, the Christianity, on Indian reservations, or with Native Americans, I should say. This guy is operating on a shoestring. And he's I've talked to him on the phone. Joe's talked to him on the phone. This man is tremendous. Please listen to what he told Joe, and please listen to what he had to say. This is going to really shake you up a little bit,
okay.
I think.
Yeah, and I'm going to say what I've experienced first. But I've noticed, you guys know I watch the sky a lot. I like to go out there and just watch all the crazy things that are happening. But I've noticed almost like shadows now. There's these, what look to be like ghosts flying around at rapid speed. There's activity in the sky. It's not human activity. We saw the article on WorldNet Daily talking about Americans are snapping at an alarming rate. Number one cause of death, suicide. They're full of fear, anxiety, depression. They can't sleep. Why? This is the spiritual world manifesting in the physical world. And for people who don't know the Lord, well, they are turning themselves inside out, and they have no foundation. They have no sense of why they're feeling that way. But back to the sky activities, back to these, I would call them demonic activities, demonic sightings. Mr. Marcus Samuel, we need to pray for him. He asked that we pray for this family, and I did not get a name, this family, that they may be saved. And he is going to go to their house this weekend because the children are seeing other children, but there are no other children. These are ghost children or demon children. They started asking their parents if they could have food for these other children. And then it turned to blood.
Can you imagine, folks?
Yeah, the family does not know what to do.
Yeah. Now, which guest, Joe, was talking about the children? The albino kind of children, or the children knocking on the doors. Who was that we had on? Was that Nathan Liel, or was that...
sure.
Folks, do you remember that guest that we had on? I know Russ Dizdar had talked about this in a general sense, but more recently we had somebody come on who said they would see children, and they would knock on the door of a house, and can we come in? This won't take long, and we want food. Oh, who was that? Oh, for crying out loud, I can't remember this. But Marcus Samuel is seeing this. This one family has experienced this in real time. As we talk today, this is happening right now as we speak. So we need to really focus our prayers on Brother Marcus Samuel of South Dakota and the family that he's ministering to. The family needs to be saved.
Yes, and he needs strength, and he wants us to pray for his strength and boldness through the Lord, that he may be able to combat these evil forces and help this family restore sane, peaceful order in their house. I mean, can you imagine really having your kids seeing ghost kids, you seeing ghost kids? Do you know what kind of stress that would put on a family, on a person?
Absolutely. And
this is people who don't.
Real.
Yeah, and he asked for that the family come to the Lord, so this must be a work in progress still. He's still communicating with them. But, yeah, we need to pray that this family comes to the Lord, and we need to pray that the Lord gives Marcus strength, power, boldness to cast this wickedness out of this family so they can receive the Lord and restore the order in their house and get rid of these beings that I think we're going to be hearing a lot more people complain about. And I'm not saying that because it's just something that I know. I can feel it. I see it with my eyes. There's a change happening. Something's not right with the world. It's off. The sky's off. The star's off.
But Marcus Samuel is the guy, and this kind of is a microcosm of what's happening across the country. I do believe that there are these pockets, these enclaves, these areas of the country that whether it be Satan worship or whether it be something different, this lack of spirituality that is contributing toward the collective destruction of our moral, of our spiritual fabric of this country. And we can hear all day long the nuts and bolts of news stories, the nuts and bolts of the Boston issue, the nuts and bolts of Benghazi. But at the root of this, what is this? The root of this is the spiritual aspect. And what Joe is saying too, and what others have said and come out and said is that, and as you said earlier, Joe, we are going to be seeing more and more of this type of paranormal activity.
And yeah, when I saw this thing in the sky, I called someone right away. I had to say it. I had to say, this is what I just saw, and because I felt crazy. I felt like there's no way this stuff's going on in the sky, but it is. And people, I'm surprised in my area the amount of things I see that it's not a regular occurrence on the nightly news. I don't know why these people don't notice it, why they're not seeing it. I don't have the equipment to be able to document it. That's something I'm going to be working on. Hopefully by the fall, fall, I'll be able to get that equipment. And why are they too plugged into their TVs? I know there's a lot of people way out in the country who enjoy sitting out at night. I'm in the middle of the city. I got city lights. It's not a very good environment to star watch with the naked eye.
Right. Well, you know what? Look, we know things as time goes on. We're told that to watch for signs in the skies and the heavens, and of course the earth with the earthquakes, with the things that take place in the sky. What's that?
I'm hearing distortion.
Oh, okay. But what we're seeing here too. In addition to that, I just want to make note of some things that are slipping under the radar. The government now, folks, have you heard this? The government now is taking steps to contact merchants, contact vendors, to let them know to turn anyone in if people are buying things like beauty products, for example. Now think of this, okay? Or hardware stores where somebody that's not a contractor will buy an inordinate amount of nails, or whatever, anything that could be used perhaps as bomb-making materials. The vendors are being urged to notify the police right away. Now, this is certainly the latest example of government overreach and outright paranoia that has followed the Boston Marathon terrorist attack. And remember that day I seemed to ramble and said that we have to watch to see how this plays out? This is exactly what I was talking about, folks. This is how this is playing out. This is the end result of, we're watching the agendas play out here. I heard from Karen in Rome, and Rome, Italy, and I just want to say thank you, Karen in Rome, who listens to this broadcast both live and on archive, who is witnessing from afar the erosion of our liberties and commenting a half a world away by saying, look, we've seen this happen in Europe. Don't let this happen in America, and it already is taking place in America. And wouldn't you know, Representative Peter King, now, he's a member of both the House Intelligence Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee. He's behind the recommendations that I'm referring to have vendors contact the police should they feel that, maybe John Smith, who's not really known to be a construction worker, is buying too many nails, or Judy Smith is buying too much nail polish remover, both ingredients that could be used for a bomb. We are going headlong into a surveillance state, and this is a bipartisan effort to take us there. I wanted to let you know about that. It is extremely important to understand what's taking place, the agenda that's taking place after Boston. Joe, it seems like we had to wait a little bit to see where this was headed. Now, we're as I said before, the project of really dissecting, and pretty much like Alex Jones has been at the tip of the spear and has done a great job in showing. No, he really has. Open it up. Yeah, he's really done a great job. He and his research staff have done a great job in breaking down the inconsistencies, haven't they? And even Mike from Natural News.
I have a problem though, not with him, but just with the whole situation of the Boston bombers. And my mom actually called me yesterday or today. We talked about this, and she said, "What really happened in Boston?" And that's not a question she usually asks. Not that she was ever a doubter of what I was saying to her, but she was confused. That tell you something? Yeah.
Doesn't that tell you something? See, when you have a woman who is, and Joe's mom is a great lady who is one that has followed the news from ever since I knew her many years ago,
and she's been a very spiritual woman as far as I've known her to be my mom.
I'm sorry?
Has been a very spiritual woman.
Right.
I mean, she's involved in their church heavily. She is not just a go on Sunday and leave it at the door when you leave. She takes it with her everywhere she goes.
And the one thing I've got to say about her is I would say that she is probably representative of 95% of America, where they look at the news and they say, wait a minute, something is wrong here. So you go to the alternative news, and the alternative news is being infiltrated by the people I spoke about in an article not too long ago about the cyber warriors, where they are purposely planting misinformation and disinformation on various websites.
Now, did you see any sections about sound interruptions?
Why are we having them now?
No, we have them a lot. And I noticed on Blog Talk Radio, and I have said this in chat before, I don't even know if I've said it out loud, but the guests in chat have numbers, and right now you see numbers from 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000. Some nights they're up in 10, 12,000. Every day, it's like a 24-hour clock. Once the clock restarts, the first person in a chat room on Blog Talk is number one. It doesn't matter what show you're on.
Right, exactly. If you
and it
sign
accumulates
into Blog Talk,
throughout the day.
Right.
So the guest numbers are always 4 or 5. 4 numbers being in the thousands, 5 numbers being in the tens of thousands. But then we have these other guests that are 12 numbers.
Which doesn't make sense. Blog
it's
Talk
impossible.
Says, and Blog Talk says, no, that doesn't exist. And yet they see it, but they say, well, it doesn't exist. It can't be. It's not true. But see, here's why we mention this. Because we are getting reports, and I haven't talked to Rick Wiles yet. I have to talk to him about this, but there are others, even on other platforms, internet streaming platforms, that are having trouble broadcasting because of distortion, because of interruptions.
There's something wrong with the internet. I don't know what it is, but there's something that has changed. It changed at the end of last week, at the beginning of this week. It's slower. I get these weird pop-ups that are, and I know one of our listeners contacted me yesterday, Sherry, I think, in Texas, about, she was getting weird pop-ups on her computer telling her to pay a fine.
Okay, that's the FBI.
Yeah.
Okay, folks.
But it was a bogus thing.
Do not. Look, this is important. This is, folks, if you get, and this is happening through an exploit, and this is important for every listener to understand. If you use Internet Explorer, there is an exploitation of the Internet Explorer browser, web browser, where it comes via email. You can get it innocuously, and it'll come up saying that you have been found visiting websites that are illegal, such as child pornography websites. And it doesn't mean that you were, but that's what it is. So in order to clear it up, you've got to pay them like $250.
Yeah, and I said, if you were really wanted, or they were looking at you for viewing child pornography, they would have already kicked your door in and taken your computer, not asked you to send some money.
Right.
Because people, you get called that or you get accused of that. That's an uncomfortable position to put somebody in, even if they've done it or not. Especially if they haven't. How awkward is it for somebody, or you get a message on your computer saying it's from the Department of Justice,
right?
Saying they want you to pay money because this was found on your computer.
A good source, by the way, real quick. A good source is Kim Commando. That's Komando. Kim Kim Komando. Kim Commando is a great source for all of that information. She's got a website. She's a nationally syndicated talk show host that talks about issues like this. She is the ultimate authority on viruses, on everything computer. I would trust her. That's Kim Commando. Folks, mark that down and visit her website. She's got a subscriber base. It's well worth it. It's just a few bucks. It's well worth it to be a part of the subscriber base, because if you run any type of Windows platform, you're going to have a problem. So definitely, Kim Commando, I highly recommend that. Joe, I didn't mean to take you away from what your thought processes were there, but
that's okay. Just don't ever let it happen again.
No, I won't.
No, we're coming up against the break. We're going to jump to the break now, and we're going to come back on the other side. And I think we're going to take a phone call from somebody who wants to call in. They've been waiting to call in, don't have time as the show's live, so we're going to give them an opportunity to call in and say a few things if they're available. I have to just double check that, but we're going to go to break, folks. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this April 25th, Thursday, April 25th. We will be right back after these short messages. Stay with us. And the music's not playing. There we go. And folks, if you're hearing silence right now, the studio is fighting with me. I press the play button for a commercial, and it presses the stop button. So we'll just do these live if we have to.
In fact,
is being brought to you courtesy of Freeze Dry Guy. Freeze Dry Guy has all your freeze dry food needs. He has a lot of
his specials.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know
me
as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, every single day I like to ask you, what have you done to prepare? What steps have you taken today to prepare? Do you have enough food? Do you have enough water? For how long? And you know, another thing, have you thought of the sanitary conditions? And I'm not trying to be gross here. I'm trying to be realistic. What about sanitary conditions? In an outage, a power outage, how about an emergency survival kit? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I now have a solution to such questions as these. I know these folks, and I got to tell you something. We don't endorse people that we don't know or haven't used their products or haven't benefited in some way from what they have to offer. So, in other words, we just don't take on sponsors that we do not believe in. But we believe in these two individuals, husband and wife, Chance and Joan. Call my friends at American Survival Wholesale, 818-720-0759. If you have a pen handy, write this number down, 818-720-0759. Or go to their website, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. You know, if you tell them that Doug and Joe sent you, you're gonna receive as a gift a full-size King James Bible in a waterproof case that is free with every purchase of a survival kit or purchases over $199. And really, folks, today, for survival equipment or needs, that's not a lot of money. Do not procrastinate. They've got the products that will work with any budget, and they will be happy to work with you on your budget. Once again, that's AmericanSurvivalSupply.com. And while I'm at it, too, I've got to mention our good friends out of Vancouver, British Columbia, GranlandFirearms.com. GranlandFirearms.com. Go to their website. Check out their weapons. They have sporting goods. Check them out. Check out what they have in stock, what's available to be shipped into the United States, or what's available for whatever if you're in Canada. But I'll tell you what, it is a pretty doggone good resource for your hunting needs, for your sporting good needs. That's Granland Firearms of British Columbia at GranlandFirearms.com. And while you're at the website, sign their guest book. Mention the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report. You might not get a great deal on a rifle, but I'm sure they'll treat you with the utmost of respect regardless. But let them know that Doug and Joe sent you. And that's Granland Firearms. Granland Firearms of British Columbia. GranlandFirearms.com.
All right, we're going to try to...
Hello?
Okay, instead of playing the intro music, yes, Michael, hi, thanks for joining us. Well, we're joined right now by Michael. He is a listener of the show. Any of you know him in the chat. Michael, we're glad to have you on.
Good to hear from you guys.
Well, and folks, just in case, or just to set this up properly, Michael is somebody, we're not going to identify him, but he's somebody that we believe you can rely on for information, and we're going to turn it over to Michael. Michael, what do you got for us in terms of what's taking place?
On which front?
From order of importance first.
Okay, I'll give you the first order of importance. The first thing I'd like to stress is for people's sake, for their sake. Doug and Joe bring a lot of information to the table. It's important because you need to be abreast of situations. And God bless you, Doug and Joe, for bringing this information in the face of adversity. That's a tough thing to do. However, that information is vital to know what season you're in. As they continue to put the pieces to the puzzle together, there are some changes that are taking place, some that you will be aware of, both in the physical front and in the spiritual front. The first thing is, I'm sure most of you have noticed a lot of military movement, vehicles going to places that they shouldn't go.
Yeah.
Of course, NTC, the National Training Center, is boosting their efforts for international forces. You guys should be aware of that. That's a story within itself. They will be doing lots of training. But you have to keep your eyes open. Now, I can only give you declassified things that you'll probably see on the news anyway. But I will tell you this. Don't subscribe to everything your eyeballs will see. Don't do that. You'll dilute yourself. It's almost like you're being pulled into a show and you're playing your role. And I do believe Doug and Joe, they hit close. Maybe that explains some of your interruptions. But,
you know what, Michael? I believe that because we've paid, and I mean we've paid technicians, the best technicians to come in our studios. We've got lines coming out and coming into the studio here that should handle the volume of traffic that we have. And they can't explain the interruptions except to say it's coming from outside of your ability to control. So, but Michael, I got to tell you, we need to focus on certain things. It's like a magic show out there, isn't it, with the news? Yeah. It's like a magic show.
Yeah, it is. And it's very, just from catching a few hours of it, it's very deceptive. It's very deceiving. Now, mind you, I don't watch TV at all, really. I will catch up on stories here and there, but from what I saw today, it's Alice in Wonderland. It really
That's right.
Yeah. I may have a clear picture on my end, but I'm telling you, it's almost like they're giving you zero answers, none. They're really giving you no answers. Like the Boston bombing, I have yet to hear them give one decent answer on there.
Yeah. You end up with more questions after they report whatever it is they say, and they're not doing journalism. They are just regurgitating talking lines.
Yeah, but I Michael, with all due respect too, I think that people are not asking the right questions.
No. But Doug, of course not. How would they know to ask the right question if they feed into the propaganda in the first place?
Yeah.
How would they know that?
That's true.
And so now they feed into this game, which is building momentum. They're spending quite a few. Now, I'm not saying the people weren't hurt. People are hurt. But to be honest with you, they don't care if people are hurt or not. They're going to see their vision through. This is in their minds. This is in their plans. That's not saying it's going to come to fruition either. But they will do everything they can do to see it through. And people should be aware of that also. But the one thing I want to stress is this. There's a physical aspect and spiritual aspect. From the spiritual aspect, here's a choice I've seen people being given. You have been selected, almost like a lottery, to pick one of two sides. Now, granted, both sides were created by mankind, but they have brilliantly captured your attention to make you choose one of two sides. Now, I'm asking most people to get off both sides. Don't stand on either side. You'll never be able to see the entire picture standing on one side. And if you notice, Doug and Joe, they're pitting one side against the other.
On every issue, every front.
Yeah. And if you notice, all their propaganda, all their stories, their entire agenda is to pit person against person so they can cause such confusion that you'll never know the real issues, the real problems, the real things that are going on here. And they're doing a great job. They started with Obama, and now you have a clear divide between Democrat and Republican. Now, here's how real this is. Families have broken up over the re-election. There have been violence has broken out over the re-election simply because of a side. Are you kidding me? They threw humanity out of the window, and the people who devise this are getting exactly what they want. So I would ask people to take a deep breath, withdraw yourself from this thing, and look at it from the outside. In the battlefield, when you're in the heat of battle, you can never see the entire battle. That's why it takes equipment like the AWACS, which is looking from far off the entire battle plan. You can't see the battlefield, if you're in the middle of it. That's from a tactical standpoint. So back off a little bit, take a deep breath, reassert the information from a truth point of view, not the propaganda point of view.
Yeah, and that's a really key point you make, and something that we've talked about in the past, being open-minded, not to change, the words in the Bible, but we are all taught differently, by different people. We all learn differently, and we have to, like you're saying, let go of what we see, let go of what we heard, and get the truth from the source, which is the Lord, through discernment and prayer, and not listen to anybody else, because being closed-minded and just having that tunnel vision, you're giving yourself no room to grow.
Yeah, that's right. And the way that's done, Joe, is they put you on one side of the game or the other. But here's the funny part. No one ever said you had to be on the game board.
Kind of like people. Okay, it would be kind of like the war games from 1983. The best way is not to play. I mean, the only way to win is not to play. Of course, in the context of a nuclear war, what they were talking about. But let me get specific with you, Michael. You have a unique perspective on things, and that's all I'll say. You know more than the average person what's going on. Where should our listeners be looking right now? What do you see in is the most important issue right now that's either taking place or about to take place or you expect to take place, either here? Where?
There are two things, Doug.
Okay.
There are two things that are they're constant. One you guys cover well, which is the money. I can tell everybody out there, the money system is going to change. One day you're going to wake up, it's going to be different. That's pure and simple. But there's a twist. There's a twist to that. But nobody should put all their focus on this money, because if the money is going to be changed, then naturally it's not going to be worth what it was to begin with, and there's going to be a lot of lack. The second thing is a devised war. I say a devised war because if you take a close look at what's going on right now, they are announcing chemical weapons. This is just the beginning. Now, everybody out there knows there's conflict. There are contradictory stories concerning bioweapons being used in Syria. I would say, yes, they were used, but I would say they were put down for another nation's agreement. Now, if you ask yourself, why would they deny a story and all of a sudden pick it back up again and say, yes, I think they've been used? Now, what you have to find is what other country also agrees with that. Then you'll begin to see a stage being set for something awful. I don't mean to scare anybody out there, but that's just the way it is. That is just the way it is. There's another country in agreement with the United States concerning Syria. That other country will be a partial ally, but then that's even designed to break down.
I can think of two possibilities, and I'm not sure if you're up to taking guesses, educated guesses, or if you'd even confirm them if I mentioned them.
To be honest, I probably would not. But I'm sure that through language being used, if you watch the language, you'll pick it up. If you just listen to the language being used, you'll pick it up. You will pick it up. Kind of like Hillary Clinton when she came out and said, "I will be as forthcoming as possible." Okay, what that means is I will tell you what I can tell you under your security clearance, because you don't have a high enough security clearance to hear the full story. That's a key word. That's a key word. So
I love it.
Someone says that, who's a politician, there you go. You know they have operatives in play, and they're not going to tell the whole story. Because Congress, I hate to tell everybody, Congress does not have that high of a security clearance. So they can't tell Congress anything that's above their clearance. They can't even testify about it. So there you go. That's the end of that story.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
You sound like, and you don't have to verify this, but one of my sources, Michael, is somebody who's testified behind the screen in front of House committees, various House committees, and intelligence committees, and had uttered the infamous phrase, the lie is different at every level. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
Now, if I can ask you, Michael, I've been doing some research. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this. How concerned should we be about the United States Department of Defense really teaming up now with Canada and Department of Homeland Security, putting out all these publications on how they will strategically take care of threats to our nation through a national infrastructure protection plan, by civil support, defensive support of civil authorities, the U.S. and Canada civil support operations? Is this a means to an end? Is this a mechanism they will? The way I see this is a blueprint, and it is a blueprint to when they declare an emergency, whatever type that may be, if there is one or not. This is how they are going to carry out their plans.
Well, yes and no. Some of the documents that are publicized, that are cataloged, one, you have to make sure it's not a draft. Okay, don't. If you read a DoD document, there are lots of documents on the internet that are in fact drafts. In other words, they're proposed. Now, there are some documents that are not proposed, that are actual standing operating procedures for in the event of said events. But yes, there are some joint operations taking place. There are issues that we're going to have to contend with. The real issues we're going to have to contend with. Some of the issues, I can tell you now, you never saw coming. Some of the issues are quite scary. They're really, they're out of the realm of reality for most. But then again, there are some that you're getting clues all over the place. And this is why I want you to come off the game board just for a second, throw away opinions, and just like you guys do, the investigators. But the end question, during an investigation, you want to know the whys, but you also want to know to what end was this guy doing this or that? What was his ultimate goal? So you have to look at an ultimate goal that nobody told you yet. Because, to be honest, and I know things are compartmentalized, I have not heard the right finish to this whole game being played out. I wouldn't state it, but from my knowledge, I have not heard of the end game. There are some deep-rooted supernatural elements in this end game, which are, some may know this, some may not, but there are some real supernatural, spooky things going on right now. Very real supernatural spooky things. And they are being, they're like flies. They're being let in here. But, the United States has a contingency. But one thing I can tell you is that we have nuclear facilities lined up all over the place, do we not?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so what happens if America comes under attack? An enemy would surely target those nuclear facilities. And if you get a map and look at the places, you'll see why. You'll also see why that there are a lot of assets moving to the Midwest.
Okay, if I'm hearing you right, let's just take the first thing that you mentioned, the nuclear facilities. Each one is around a populated area, of course.
Also, many on the fault line.
Well, fault lines, yeah, too.
And I'm going from a Homeland Security the geospatial geoconops, where they use the New Madrid earthquake scenario and put maps out and show the different nuclear facilities and other important infrastructure around the area that would be impacted.
But Michael, about this, you're referencing an attack by someone from without, someone outside the United States. Is this, in your mind, a distinct possibility when, in fact, they could take us down and essentially have taken us down from within? And I believe that we are a captured operation. But that said, is an attack from outside forces something that you would entertain?
I'll say this: if we were attacked, what evidence would you have other than actually seeing the missile, right? But what if there was no missile? Now I'm giving you a scenario here.
Sure.
Let's just say they said we were hit by a missile, or someone assumed we were hit by a missile. What evidence would you have? Communications would certainly break down. Everything would be zoned. People would have, limited access to the internet, things of that nature. So a lot of things would be panicked and hearsay. But if those nuclear facilities, if 2 or 3 were ever to go down, they would have to separate the United States. They would have no choice.
And
I'm just giving you that clue so that you can see for yourselves. Joe, you brought up those documents. Within those documents, you can find areas of interest within those documents. And it just so happens that those areas of interest are so many miles away from a fault line, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happens that our nuclear facilities, some of the big ones, are lined on that fault line. And it just so happens that fracking, the process of fracking, was also taking place to the left of those facilities, straight up and down through the United States. Now,
that's interesting.
They can go drill all day, but why would you drill in a spot that's going to produce nothing? Why would you drill so close to a fault line, unless you were going to plant a charge of some type, and then leave it? And they leave those sites, they did it for a little while, and then they left. But see, that story dropped. That story just dropped and went away. Nobody investigated that further. But they did what they did. They didn't pull anything out, and they left the site. Does that make sense to anyone?
Mm-hmm.
It does to me. My question, though, is to what end, Michael? I mean, maybe that's too far, too broad of a question. Maybe you can hone it down to what you can feel comfortable answering. To what end?
Okay, let's go biblical on this. To what end? Now, just to clarify something, if there are, I'd be curious to know how many people know that Israel and Jerusalem is promised to be attacked in the end. I wonder how many people actually know that. I know a lot of people know that if they attack that land, that the Lord will come down and protect it. I submit this: the Jews were taken and slaughtered in World War II. They had no protection. But I also present this: that was written about. Now, again, after he took 1/6 of them, and if you look at the Census Bureau, this is what's amazing. If you look at the Census Bureau of the Jews that were slaughtered back then, because the German did, in fact, catalog all the Jews that were taken through a very, one of the first computers. At any rate, the number comes out to 1/6 of that population was killed. The others were spread throughout the nations. I find that one of those, 100% coincidental things that you can't ignore. Okay, but after that was written, they are to go into captivity again. Now, Israel's help is who? Us. Are we Israel's help? And if people talk of globalists, then naturally, to take down, if that's the target, if Israel is the target, then America has to be disbanded. America has to be disbanded. Nothing will happen to Israel so long as the United States is here, so long as it's functional. I'll say functional. However, if it's disbanded, if it's made powerless for any reason, then that war will begin, which brings me to another point. There are situations arising, both in America, just look at the timing, both in America and overseas. And what they're doing is, from simple observations, you can see that they're trying to capitalize off of this momentum that they've created. Just think about it. But America has to be separated, disbanded, dysfunctional, not able to come to the rescue of Israel in order for those armies to actually invade Israel. And everybody knows the beast will sit as a king in the Holy Land and proclaim himself as God. Now, he cannot do that so long as America's here. He simply can't do that. But if something happened to America, he could certainly do that with little to no opposition.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and everybody asks the question, where does America fit in the Bible prophecy? But let me, I guess, phrase it this way. Are we looking at the changing of this nation from America to having it being taken control of by another nation, or are we looking at the land made desolate?
Or somewhere in between?
Not to put you on the spot.
My opinion is, personally, let's just say, in a perfect world, America would be broken down into 4 or 5 portions. Each portion would then be armed. And, of course, civil wars would ensue between those factions. That division would probably erupt with some sort of unrest at our leadership level. And events from there would absolutely begin to divide states into 4 or 5 segments. Now, once that happens, we've lost centralized power. And who knows what horrors will ensue over here.
Is that one of the reasons why they are pushing for a North American Union, for a more centralized federal authority? Or is that smoke and mirrors?
The NORTHCOM has been on the table for quite some time. And I think that NORTHCOM cannot manifest. I don't think that NORTHCOM can manifest at all, to be honest. I do, however, think that other things can take place. But NORTHCOM, when I speak of NORTHCOM, not in its actions, not in its structure, not in its organization, but their plans. And if you read on the Internet, you can actually find a mission statement from NORTHCOM of what they are assigned to do. But then you have another party taking place called the DHS. And I can tell you now that the DHS is in conflict with the armed forces in many ways. What you have is a split between forces within America. Now, that shouldn't sound good to anybody. That really shouldn't sound good.
It doesn't. Michael,
that shouldn't sound good.
No, and I know we have DHS offices on military bases, and I've heard firsthand that there's some acrimonious incidents take place among them. But let me ask you this question flat out. Who is giving the marching orders to DHS? Is this Obama's personal army, do you feel? Or do you know? Or
I'll say this. I'll say this. I really do think it's a mistake to think that DHS is part of any entity but itself. I really do think it's a mistake for anyone to think that DHS is under any public figure's control. That's a mistake. Look at the fruit. Look at what's happened with DHS. Look at what they've gotten away with. and they're still there and growing and calling shots and overriding. That's all you have to do is look. And if you look hard enough, you'll find out that, in fact, the commander-in-chief is not very pleased with that. It's really causing turmoil. But this year, there will be some figures that rise, which should clarify quite a few things. It really should clarify some things.
Did you say some figures?
Some figures will rise that should clarify some things. They absolutely should open the eyes of many people. To a degree, and it's still going to take information to do that. But these figures they're not, these figures are very demanding, so to speak. But these people are coming into power this year, and they'll be made known. And so when that takes, the game is changing in part because of them. There are things on the rise that really have not been calculated. And personally, I think it's important that people consider, if they haven't considered, they need a stationary gauge to all these things. Now, the only book that I know of that's a very good gauge to what's going on, if read right, is the Bible. In particular, certain books in the Bible. They've not been wrong yet, but they seem to pinpoint all these events with amazing accuracy. And by the way, that I know most people don't know this, but inside the services, they have specialists that study prophecy, so they can work around it. I'm not sure if anybody they work around prophecy. There are two things that stand in the way of plans. Have you ever noticed, Doug, when you probably have heard of a plan on the horizon that took a left or right turn, and then you ask yourself why, when all these other plans go through, even when you know about them, but some plans are altered, and you have to ask yourself why. Who would alter that? Because it's not like we can really determine who the human author of these plans are. But a lot of them change because the people you speak of, such as the Illuminati and all these other guys, they have their leader, and their leader can't go against God himself. He just can't do it. He has rules too. And they will go around those rules. That's why they have special holidays. If a person truly had all power, they could work anywhere they wanted to, but that's not the case. They plan things. They're obsessed with not making a mistake. Most people say they're obsessed to have their way. But I know some of them are obsessed with not making a mistake because the price is too high. Their souls are gone. So imagine if your soul was gone and you make a mistake, and now you're stuck in a perpetual nightmare. They don't want to make a mistake.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to really listen and, if necessary, replay just what Michael has said in the last couple of minutes, because I believe, honestly, he has said a mouthful. Michael, if we look toward the city of London, would we be too far off into perhaps seeing a glimpse of the future, like a future Camelot, a future attempt of a Camelot, return of a Camelot?
No, actually, you would not.
Okay.
In fact, that is a very prophetic statement. In fact, that is a very prophetic statement. That just surprised me. If anybody, some of your audience is probably out there. I'm sure they have read the Bible in detail. They probably know it much better than I do. But I found through my readings there are more than one dragon. More than one. and one family wears the crest of the dragon. In fact, when they take office or whatever, don't they give their pledge to the great red dragon?
Indeed.
That's over there where you were talking about, right? That
Indeed,
same entity is also mentioned. It's mentioned that it will rise again. Now, here's something that many people don't know. They can read it in Revelation. Is that this Camelot you speak of, this reestablishment of kingdoms that were once here, will in fact happen again. And there's a harlot that rides this beast that sits on the 7 mountains that came out of the sea. By the way, when it came out of the sea is also mentioned a little bit further in that same reading where that's found in Revelation as being the people. A lot of people mistake that for the ocean. But if they read a little further, it explains what the waters were. And it says there are many peoples. So obviously, this kingdom will have dominion over many kings, over many people.
Mm-hmm.
But sitting on top of that kingdom, making friends with that kingdom, is another nation. It's called Mystery Babylon. Now, I encourage everybody to read the description of Mystery Babylon, and don't sue me for saying this, but then I want you to go back and read the description of Jerusalem. And then you tell me what you think. Just tell me what you think. England and Israel have in fact been making, they're making friends, which is surprising. That is surprising. But it also points out another country that's in trouble, Europe. If I were you guys, I'd keep my eyeballs on Europe. Whatever happens to Europe is going to happen to the United States because we're all tied together. I already told you the United States can't be here according to prophecy. It cannot be here to defend Israel. And it already says that the so-called Camelot, parts of Camelot, will turn again the one who rides that beast. Does that make any sense?
Unbelievable sense. And in fact, this is worthy of a show in and of itself because, yes, this also speaks to our global economic crisis that we're seeing as well. Because, as you mentioned early on, we could wake up and find ourselves in a totally different economic situation.
Yeah.
Who in fact will superintend, or who in fact will be in charge of that new, shall we say, digital global currency or global currency, as it is. So I think that this is important as well. And I think the answer is there. I think you referenced some very important aspects. You've got the spiritual, shall we say, center of the world, and then you've got the economic center of the world, and then you've got America, which stands in the way, as it is right now, of this New World Order formation. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, and to add to that, before an incident, there's always a public plea. Let me qualify this. If you've noticed, politicians are excellent people at presenting plans that are supposed to be hidden. Here's how they do it. When something happens, a small incident or a notable incident, they try to get public support. The reason they want public support is because if they can get enough people saying, I want revenge, right, then their little Luciferian God is okay with that. Because he cannot just snatch you. He has to have you agree with him. So, every time America has agreed with a politician saying, yes, we need revenge, everything goes deeper into the hole. Have you noticed that? Every single time, our situation in America gets worse. It changes for the worst.
And that is, biblical because...
well, it's by design.
We know
biblical, yeah.
Revenge is not ours to take.
Yeah.
But
and you know what? You know what, Joe? Listen, Joe and Doug, design and biblical things are one and the same. And let me explain this. If a plan is by design, then we have to understand authority. If you are a Christian, you believe that God has ultimate authority. In other words, every good and bad plan must be presented to him, have his approval before it happens in the first place. Number two, he said, do my prophecy no harm, which means they will take place. And number three is that biblical evidence supports the design the enemy has, and he knows he does what he can get away with. That's why he is prosperous. That's why he's prosperous. And a lot of people will say, well, what we have to do is pray against it. Yes, you pray, but you know what? People should pray for the sake of the others, their brethren, not to change prophecy. What they should do is say, let the Lord's will be done, because we are not smart enough to know God's plan intimately. We may know little bits and pieces, but why would I waste my time in trying to change the entire world, right, when I can change a person who can change a person who can change a person who can in return probably change the entire world? You see how our focus is misdirected?
Indeed so. We have to, in a sense, a lot of times we're praying in the wrong direction. And, of course, you're speaking of like the butterfly effect where, one person can change another and down the line, and an entire agenda could be altered by a single utterance, perhaps, or a single deed, or even a single prayer, if you will. But nonetheless, it can be uttered. I got to tell you, Michael, the first time, and this surprised me, I was told in 2004, during, I'm sorry, it might have been 2003. It was at the time of the Iraq invasion. That was one of the first times that I heard of, and maybe this happened in the past, but I had a source tell me that there was a high-level cabinet meeting where the very topic of this cabinet meeting was biblical prophecy in relation to the plan of attack in Iraq. Do you know anything about that? Have you? Always. Wow.
Always. If there are special teams, listen, this, and see, a Christian should really jump out of their chairs. If the most powerful people in this world have to work around prophecy, then what is the average person's excuse in not, if evil believes in prophecy and they have to circumvent it? See, they can't do everything, Doug. Here's the deal, and this is how it is. Their God is a representative of Lucifer, a rep who can manifest and disappear as he pleases. And if anybody has ever talked to any Illuminati insider, they'll know this. I know military personnel who, let's just say they don't look right physically. They don't look right in the face, in the eyes. They don't look right. And these guys can do weird things, just weird, detestable, abominable things. But the Illuminati knows that if they make a mistake, if they go against God's will, right, they have no choice but to go before their time. A servant of Satan is just like a demon. And let me give you this one tidbit. When Jesus was going to cast out a demon, and the demon said, have you come to, send us there before the time? Send them where? And they said, oh, please, just let us go jump in these pigs. And he jumped in, Legion jumped in a whole bunch of pigs, and they ran in the water and drowned. By the way, that kind of sounds like China, but these Illuminati personnel, they know for a fact that their souls can be sucked up, taken, right there on the spot. If they make a mistake, it's not about pleasing their deity. It's about not making a mistake. God is very merciful. He's full of grace. Satan is not. Satan is a cruel leader. And if you make a mistake, you're going to pay the price. But you have to belong to him to pay that price. And what he's trying to do now is get everybody he can included in his game. That's why he makes us choose one side or the other. He'll say, what are you, a Republican or Democrat? How many times have people heard in their past, they approach someone, right? And this has happened to all of us. They approach someone, they hear some Republicans or Democrats speaking, and they go near a Democrat, they kind of ease away, you know, and they go near Republicans and they can talk about the Democrats. Well, I'm sorry, that's choosing sides. How many people have pointed out a senator, pointed out every flaw he ever had? And this is serious business. They point out a flaw, and then they discuss this flaw with other people, and they get a whole bunch of people talking about one person's flaw. What this person has done is they just compromised themselves. They just did the exact opposite of what provides them protection. And if you notice, your feelings, who you are, your essence changes when you engage in these things. You're not like you used to be. In fact, you get angry. You get bitter. Things rise up in you, and you don't even know where they came from. That is raw. That is raw hatred. That is raw evil that rises up when we do this. When we're playing his game, we're going to pay his price.
It sounds almost as if, Michael, that you described the collective sentiment of the United States, or at least a significant portion of the collective sentiment following the 2012 presidential elections. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I would say that. I'll say this: from in 2007, everything changed for me personally. In 2007, and it's been downhill from there. I think that everyone can agree. It's been downhill. And it's not downhill in the way that everybody would recognize either. You have to remember that you guys can see. All of you all can see. But for every one person that can see, there's 100,000 that are still asleep. They can't see. So you can recognize things that they couldn't possibly fathom. But they can't, their minds are not adapted to even think that way. But we're going downhill quickly. But it's just not. Obama, I believe, marked a time in history. Let's make sense of it this way. He's a black president, no doubt. The first time that ever happened, right? Anytime something happens for the first time, people should pay attention. They really should pay attention. How many times did something happen for the first time where notoriety was involved and it did, in fact, change the way the world operates? I would say every single time.
You're talking about event markers. You know, people have a tendency to talk about timing and such, but you're talking not about timing, but event markers, if you will.
That's right. That's right. For every, just like the Pope. This was the first Pope from I call him the olive guy. This olive guy, because he's from a land where they produce all the olive oil, most of the olive oil, or a lot of it. Gloria de Olive. Sounds like one of those prophecies, by the way. But anyway, this guy was the first time his type had been given that office of Pope. He also chose a name that nobody has ever chosen before, which should draw people's attention to something is happening here. The spiritual things have changed. And if people don't believe in the spiritual atmosphere, you're going to wake up to a nightmare one day. You really are. We have soldiers seeing, listen, this is going to sound nuts to the average person, but we have a lot of soldiers. We're talking about joint soldiers all over the place who are supposed to be engaging in serious business, you know, and they're looking up. They're catching things on their night vision. We have pilots that are stopping helicopters mid-flight because they're going to hit some sort of object that you can see through. Now, when I say object, you guys, have you ever seen the movie Predator?
I have not.
A long time ago. Yes, I have.
It's a very old movie, but he turns invisible. But it's not invisible. You can still see that something is moving. It's just hard to see it, right?
Yes.
That's exactly what's in the air. And for all those who will sit there and say, well, our technology is not that advanced, I can tell you, you don't know what's in the sky. You don't know, did we do it? Did the fallen angels do it? Are these things something we don't even know about? But I can tell you there's a lot of stuff in the sky, and chances are you look right through them, and that's why nobody looks up. They don't look up because they can't see them. But when you do look up, you always seem to catch something out of the corner of your eye or right in front of your face for a second. Now, everybody can't do that. It'd be, they're seeing things, or they're too tired. And believe me, I've personally interviewed people who came from the psychiatrist after flights that they were scared to death with, and something is up there. I say that for a fact. Something is up there. Something is scaring military people, which has really thrown the game plan into high gear because evidently these Illuminati, these special interest groups have ramped up their little engineering games. They have sped things up. And I'll bet you that'll be another term that you'll hear of. Things on the dark side are being sped up because a window is starting to open. Because one day their leader is going to manifest. Until their leader manifests, they are to put all the pieces where they're supposed to be. And they're going to keep doing it.
And those being, the UN talking about the coming of the world savior, and the one world religion saying, some call him the Imam Mahdi, some call him the Maitreya, some call him the Messiah, but he's going to come back on the world stage in real life to rule the world and create peace and safety. Now, this is from the UN's own website. You guys can go find this information.
It's also,
Michael,
yes, it is. It is. Yes, Doc.
I'm sorry for interrupting here, because I know we have a limited amount of time, and you're a valuable resource. But I've been writing a lot about Benghazi and about the World War III is actually started, and it's going to start in Syria as opposed to Iran, for example, because Syria is, of course, the firewall for Russia. And we're going toe-to-toe with Russia in Syria. Is this something, and of course North Korea, that situation there is related to the Syrian situation peripherally. Of course, that would be a longer conversation than we have, but where should we be looking on the world stage? Not where people want us to look, but where should, according to you, sir, where should we be looking on the world stage?
Where would I look?
Yes.
I think I would, to be honest, before any major operation, that not one operation has been happenstance, mind you. Everything has been well planned out. Pearl Harbor was flat out ignored. That's a story within itself, but before any major action, they always give small hints, and it's when it comes to the military, things are preceded by training. Listen, the military does not train just to train. When they train normally in peacetime, right, they spend a limited amount of money. Most of that goes into R&D. But when the R&D is accomplished, when they have the weapons they want, they desire a field test for whatever reason, they begin to do joint operations training. Why do they do joint operations training? Because they're going to be working with all the militaries. All the military forces will be working together.
Including
North
international.
Korea, yes, all the military.
Yes.
Every single last one of them. And if you notice, barriers are being broken down right now. Barriers are being broken down. People are, nations are being propped up, so to speak. Propped up. And any sane man would say, dealing with North Korea, they would say, well, how come we just don't go over there, right, and strategically bomb certain places, and we don't have to deal with this guy anymore, and the people can do whatever they want. And we already know China's army is devoted to North Korea. Well, I hope people know this. But our relations with China are not relations at all. Our relations are monetary only. We have collective interest as far as money, trade, things of that nature. And that's only to satisfy the needs of the engine parts, and another name for engine parts are people. That's what that's for. But those ties are soon to break down. I'll give you a situation. This new virus has a biomarker in it. A biomarker, viruses have biomarkers when they're engineered. Somebody has already blamed us, blamed the facility.
This is the H7H9 or something like that, the new flu strand that's in Taiwan, that just reached Taiwan. It was in China. Is this what you're referring to? This
engineered.
Okay.
Engineered. So if something is engineered, it comes from one or two places. And we took all the German scientists who were professionals at that. We also took the Russian scientists who were professionals at that. So you figure it out. Now, when it's delivered over there, hypothetically, when it's delivered over there to give people what's called a fever, sooner or later they would trace it back to the source, which would cause someone to break any type of restraint and do a preemptive launch, period, point blank. In a perfect world scenario, that's exactly what will play out. In that strike, of course, we have missile defense systems. And with the missile defense systems, set up, armed, ready to go. Defense net set up, armed, ready to go. The internet switches installed, ready to go. All states have been zoned, ready to be shut off and on when they want to. All entry and exits to states, now being equipped with certain materials where they can tell who's left and who's come in, where they can actually shut down states, even down at the county level. With all that in place, everything is ready to go except one thing. The far-away trigger.
Yep.
The far-away trigger has to be pulled. See, the trigger is never close. You can't pull a trigger where you can be heard you're pulling the trigger. You can't do that. So what do? You do that through deception. You cause a rustling, a diversion, while the trigger is being pulled, and then no one knows who pulled the trigger.
That is some wisdom right there. Michael, we are up against the top of the hour break. We can talk to you all night.
We could have we could have program upon program with you. Let me ask you before the top of the hour break, Michael, and I'm sorry, Joe. I have to.
No, it's okay.
I have to ask you, Michael. Give us, Joe and I, some practical advice. Number one, are we on the right track? Are we playing our zone properly? And if not, do we need to hone in? Or even if we are, what should we do? Where should we hone things a little bit differently? Give us some practical advice to help our listeners understand what's going on.
Okay. It's important. I commend you guys on the information gathering. That's number one. But understand this. The major players do not reside within the United States. They're not here. They're not in the U.S. You have to find those major players and where their domain is. Once you find these major players, and understand that the powerhouse is not within the United States. Even though the United States is about to be blamed for something, stealing energy or monopolizing energy, the main player is not here. If I were you, I would honestly, right now, pay attention to two places. I would pay attention to Egypt. Now, this won't make sense to anybody. Pay attention to Egypt. Pay attention to Europe. If you pay attention to those two places, you'll begin to catch on. The U.S. is a control mechanism, but there's a power loss right now. There's an absolute power loss. And before power is depleted, you can count on war. It's systematic. It always takes place that way. As far as your personal responsibilities, you guys have got to be ready to move. Everybody's got to be ready. If you're going to prep and be ready, don't set your heart on being in one location. Don't do that. You'll upset yourself. I would also advise people, realistically, to take a day and turn their fuse box off in their house. They need to know what it feels like. You have to get over the mental part. If you're not mentally prepared for the small things that are going to happen, you're just not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And these are ridiculous things. Like, take a day with no internet. No, just turn your fuse box off and find out. You have to discover, what do I do in this situation? You got, anybody can do that. You don't have to have money to turn your fuse box off. Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
And then find out what you need to do from there. And be ready to move. You have to have something to be ready to move within 45 minutes. Because I'll tell you this. I can tell you this. When these states, if these states ever go on lockdown, everybody is going to be displaced. Everybody. There will be no exceptions. Everybody will be displaced. You will not be in your home. You will be displaced. Don't count on being in your home. Unless you're on the inside, you can forget it. And even some of those, most of those on the inside are going to be double-crossed. So don't count on that. Don't do it. For one, you're going to have cells all around America trying to do this, that, and the other. I don't think that they can contain 150,000 sleeper cells. I really don't think that. 150,000 is a big number. Each cell containing only the Lord knows how many members. Okay, so you have to think of these things and stay within the umbrella of reason and biblical reason. Listen, if they go by the Bible to plan their evil, you better go by the Bible to stay out of evil, to safeguard yourself. They cannot mess with certain people because of the Bible. There's something holding them back, which is stalling everything that they're doing. But for some reason, it's not in China, not in North Korea, and it's not in Syria, and it's not in Egypt, and it's not in Europe. So keep your eyeballs open.
Yeah, Michael, I want to thank you for your time tonight. I don't know if you can still even hear me. Can you hear me? Okay. No. I got no sound. Can you guys in chat hear me? We got a prompt from BTR on the studio. Shows that were scheduled before 9:30 may be deleted and schedule a new episode. Newly scheduled shows are working properly. Thank you for your patience. I'm still called in as host. I see you and me are still live on the air. But I don't know if that is the case. Can you hear us? And, okay, Jason, who's called in on Skype, he's on the phone line, can hear. Right. People who are not on the phone line, it seems like they cannot hear. Okay.
I think we should act on that prompt. I believe what they were telling us was we had to call back in.
No, they said that the show's going to be deleted. And it may be deleted.
Is the show over?
It's still saying we're live when we have 53 minutes. But yes, Blog Talk, yes.
Blog Talk terminated our show.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen that are listening on the phone lines, we apologize for this stellar service that we've got here. And
well, we're gonna. I mean, I don't know if you guys are hearing this clearly at all. Those on the phones are. We will be talking with Blog Talk Radio because the very least they can do for their customers is notify them when they're having problems. That's something we don't get, except one time last week when they said we couldn't do a show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end the show right now.
Some can hear, some can't. Some hear music. Oh. You know, what Michael was saying, turning off the fuse box, maybe that was a sign. Maybe those are confirmation.
Well, all right. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to be forced, apparently, to end the episode as we speak and pick this up tomorrow night, where we will be back live, perhaps with a different provider. We will let you know, because we will not put up with any more of this programming interruption. We apologize. We want to thank Michael. We want to thank all your listeners, all the listeners. Thank you so much for being part of our show. God bless.
Yeah, and we got to download this right away because Michael made some excellent points, and I'd hate to see the show get deleted. Yeah, God bless each and every one of you. We're going to end the show now. We will see you tomorrow at the same time, and if it's not on Blog Talk Radio, it'll be on our website and Christians United Broadcasting Network, if Blog Talk is still having issues, and we will make a decision as the month is winding down as to what we are going to do with this.
God bless.
Have a good night.